So we bought this Discovery engine a while back and are just now getting around to putting it together. And Ethan and I have talked a little bit about how like car engines work, or really just any kind of combustion engine for that matter. So what I'll do now is, Ethan, can you explain what you know about engines and how they work?
I know that whenever you try to start a car, the inside of the engine, there's this like thing where it blows up.
Stand so we can see it.
Okay. It's where like in the middle of the engine, it's this place where it blows up that kind of starts the car.
Okay. Is that it?
And
That's okay. That's what you know. That's why we're building this, so that way you can learn how they work. And then maybe
yeah,
learn
I
more.
forget some.
That's okay.
Of it.
All right. So the goal for this here is for us to put this engine together, and it's got, well, apparently we open these bags, but it's got a whole bunch of different parts in here to kind of show how the engine works, crankshaft, the pistons, all kinds of stuff. So we'll end up putting this together and hopefully have a good time doing it, and he'll learn how engines work. So we'll go ahead and get started. All right, Bub, so we've built a little bit of this so far. Can you go over what the parts are and what they're called and show me on the model?
We made this.
Okay,
with
what are those parts?
the engine mounting stand and the oil pan and screw. And,
You can skip the screws.
Okay.
We just need to know the parts of the engine.
Yeah.
And then what came next?
The low crankcase.
Okay.
Then we needed the crankshaft, the connecting rods, the connecting rod keeper.
Yep.
And
And can you show us on here what's what? So where's the crankshaft?
this long piece
Okay.
that connects all of these, that's the crankshaft.
All right. And what are the connecting rods?
These right here,
Okay.
what makes these get connected
Yep.
right there.
And then
That's
okay. And then what are the big things at the bottom that are hanging from the bottom? What are those
these
called?
are piston halves.
Yeah, they're called piston halves in here. Typically with a real engine, it's just one big piston head. But since this is just a model, they break them in half. But usually it would just be one cast piston head as a whole assembly. Yep. Okay. All right, you want to explain to people what we've done so far?
So
We don't have to start here. We've already talked about, I think, all this stuff. Talk about like from, I guess from here on. What do we do?
So we put on the cylinder block. Then we got this top on that's white.
What's that called?
The head gasket.
Yep.
Yeah, and we put in 6 screws to
And then
glue the cylinder block on.
what's inside of the cylinder block?
The pistons.
Yep. They go on what? What's that called that you're twisting right there?
Wait. The crankshaft.
Yep, good job. All right, we'll keep building. All right, so you want to tell us what we did here?
So we did the low cylinder head, the cylinder head cover, and valve stems. We did 8 of them, and springs, and obviously we all need screws. Every single one.
Yep, so we put that together. Excuse me. And then once we put it together, then what do we do with that once we put it together? What's it say to do?
We take the valve stems and we put springs on the end of them, like this. Go like that.
Yep. And then it goes.
And then it took us a while to figure this out, but like with the cylinder head covers, it took us a while to figure out which way they needed to go. And we tried switching them, that didn't work. We tried flipping them upside down, and that was the one that did work.
So now we put it back in there, right?
Yep.
Okay, and then where does this go now that this piece is done? Uh-oh, be careful. So where does it go now that this piece is done?
This is done. We go to number 7, and this is continued on the low cylinder head.
Yep, and we install it onto what? What do we install the lower cylinder head onto?
This.
What is that called?
Well, it's the main part.
Well, what is this part right here called?
The piston?
No, right there. Cylinder block.
The cylinder.
Remember, that's the block the cylinders sit in. All right, good job. All right, so what have we done at this point? And you can point it out on the engine if you want to.
We have, so if you look deeply inside, well, right here,
Yep.
as you can see, there is the long shaft.
Yep.
And we put B7A, B7B, B7C, and B7 up till H.
Okay, and what are those called? What are those things called? Remember? Right there. Cam.
Timing cam.
Timing cams, correct. Yep, we put the timing cams on. And so then so we put the timing cams on the shaft on the engine, and then what we do?
Oh, we connected them onto the long shaft.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we installed
Then
what?
we installed the upper cylinder head
Yep.
with 6 screws.
Yep.
Then we used 8 rocker arms,
Yep.
5 bearings, 1 short staff, and 10 screws.
Yep. And then where do we put those out on the engine? Can you show what those are?
Right there.
Okay. And what do those rest on? Whenever we had them right, what did each one of those rest on? These little arms, they rested on something. What do they rest on? Do you remember what those are called? You might have to go back and take a look. Remember what they're called?
Wait, is it? It's in there. They're called valve stem.
What are they called?
a valve stem.
Yep, good job. Okay, so we got the rocker arms on, and then what's the next step? What do we have to install? And then the rocker arms, and what we have to do here.
Install bearing to keep short staff in the piston
Position.
position.
Yep, okay. All right, go ahead.
So what we did was
Do you know what this part down here is called?
the oil pan.
Yep, good job.
Brakes. There's the oil pan. Come on.
Yeah.
Here's the oil pan. Right here is blue space, and this is what holds up the whole engine.
Okay.
Well, the oil pan holds the oil, right?
Yeah, it holds the oil.
Okay.
And then you see these things right inside there.
Yes.
Those are pistons.
Okay. What do they do?
And those, like, if you twist this right here,
What are you twisting there? What's that called? Do you remember?
I forget.
The camshaft.
Yeah, the camshaft.
Okay.
Yeah. You move that. No, it's not a camshaft.
Oh, you're right. It's the crankshaft.
Yeah, and if you turn it, you see how those move?
Yes.
Yeah.
Where's the camshaft at?
The camshaft is up there.
Up top, right? You're right. That's good job. Good job.
Then that, it activates those to go up and down, up and down. And
What are the things going up and down called? Remember?
wait.
Might be on the other page. Flip it over. Or actually open it up. Open it up. There they are, right there. Remember? Right here?
Valve stem.
Valve stem.
Valve stems.
Yep.
Valve stem. So yeah, those things that have the springs on them, those are valve stems.
Okay.
And whenever that pushes up, those also push up and down, up and down.
Okay.
And what do the valve stems do? Remember those other things we put on there? The little push. All right, so we officially finished building the engine, and now Ethan is going to go over what he learned and how this engine works. All right, bub, so go ahead.
We start here on the starter, which
What's the starter do? Remember the gears inside? What's
yeah,
it turn?
It turns the gears.
Which then turns what? Look what it's attached to inside.
The crankshaft.
Yep. And that gets what moving? All the pistons, right? Okay.
And then
So then as the pistons get moving, what happens?
there's an explosion.
Remember?
Like an
Well, look.
explosion?
Remember you have your intake up here and your exhaust for the cylinder
Yeah.
from the valve stems and the rocker arms. So remember, these rocker arms move those valve stems and they open and close depending on where the cylinder position or the piston position's at, and it lets fresh air in and exhaust air out, right?
Through here.
No, this is your exhaust.
Yeah.
So through the top of the cylinder. So the valve stems will move, right?
I meant
and
like the exhaust comes through there.
Yeah, the exhaust comes through here, right? So when the exhaust valve stem opens, that's what lets the exhaust from the burnt fuel and air mixture out. But so as your starter moves your pistons, right? It compresses the air and the fuel inside the piston, and your rocker arms and your valve stems let that air in and out. And then you have fuel injectors that mix the fuel in with the air in the cylinder, right?
Yep.
So then what happens after the air and the fuel inside the cylinder are mixed? What happens?
This doesn't have to do anything anymore, right?
Right, because why? What does this do? That's what's that called? Do you remember?
I forget.
The distributor cap.
Yeah,
Or the distributor. That's what they call it. Distributor cap, same thing. What does a distributor cap do? What are those wires going to?
Oh, they're going through there, and they make like sparks.
So spark plugs, right? And what's the spark do inside the cylinder?
It makes an explosion.
Yep. Inside the cylinder, right?
Yep.
And then what's that explosion do?
It pushes it up.
Well, it pushes the piston back down.
Down. Yeah.
Right. So as two of the pistons are being pushed down from the explosion, that's driving the other two pistons up to compress the fuel and the air inside the cylinder, right? And then those two pistons will then have the little explosion that will push those two pistons down, and then the other two pistons will be forced back up. And so the engine, through using gas, cycles, right? It cycles with two pistons. For this engine, it's two pistons. So two pistons will be up when two pistons are down, and then the explosion inside the pistons that are up drives those pistons down while also driving the other two pistons up to compress the air and the fuel, right? And that cycle starts all over. Your distributor cap sends a current to the spark plug, which then sparks, lights the fuel and the air on fire. The big explosion happens inside the cylinders, push those pistons down, and the other two come up, right? Right. And then, so that's what moves your crankshaft, and then your crankshaft does what? Ultimately, what does it do?
It starts the...
No, the crankshaft doesn't start anything. The crankshaft is what spins, right?
Yeah.
It rotates with the cylinders. So then your crankshaft, as your pistons, don't do that, as your pistons are being pushed up and down by the explosions, is turning that crankshaft, which is then outputting power from the engine to what? What sits right behind the engine? Do you remember? Don't remember? No. It's okay, it's a transmission.
Yeah.
So the engine provides power to the transmission, which is what turns your drive shaft on your car, and it's what transmits power from the engine to your wheels. So it goes from your engine to your transmission, from your transmission to your drive shaft, and then from your drive shaft it goes through a couple other things, like you have like a rear differential that splits that power off and goes to your wheels for your car, right? All right, so do you want to show them how it works when you turn it on?
So goes through there.
Yep.
And goes down to the crankshaft, which makes it move.
Yep. And you can see all the pistons moving inside, right? Yep. And now let's turn it over this way. Oh, no, I'm sorry, the lights aren't here. So you see how those lights light up?
Yeah.
Those lights are basically your spark plugs. So notice where the piston position is at when the spark plugs light up.
Yeah, whenever the sparks light up, the piston that's right next to it is usually down.
Or it'll be up,
Well, usually.
right? Okay. Right. And so then we have this fan here. Do you know what that fan does?
It cools the radiator.
Yep. Yeah, pulls air across your radiator fins to help cool the engine coolant inside the engine, because those explosions are very hot and it creates a lot of heat in your engine. And so there's all these little veins that run all throughout your engine where your radiator coolant channels through. And then there's an accessory drive on the engine that drives a pump that pumps that coolant through the engine. And that fan basically draws air across the radiator to help cool that coolant as it goes through it. But that was it, right?
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna plug it. So what'd you think about making this with this engine?
It was really fun.
It was a lot of fun.
I'm glad I went out and did that, helped you with your car so that we could actually get this
Yeah,
and be able to build it.
a lot of fun building it, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Did you learn a whole bunch? You think you now know more or less how an engine works?
Or,
Yeah. So now when you get older and you start working on real stuff, like real engines, you'll know how they work. And you'll know kind of how to troubleshoot them if they're not working right, or if your check engine light comes on or something, you'll understand how an engine works to the point where you can start troubleshooting it to fix it, right? Because now you know you need air, fuel, and spark. Those three things, right? That's basically what makes an engine go. Okay? All right, good job, bub.